Hey, so you know what's kind of nice? Breathing. Just look at me go. Breathing is a shared human experience, kind of like playing Mario games. Something pretty much everyone has played, or at the very least is aware of. You don't have to go far to find somebody who loves Mario games, whether it's the video game community at large, your peers, a friend, or even the person you're married to. People love the Mario games. Makes things really convenient too, because it makes for a lot of different games to choose from. And when you're done playing all the Mario games, you can get started on the weirder Mario games. This fella's got games for days. But whether you've played all the Mario games and have a thirst for more, or simply are looking for some alternatives to earn some "I'm cool because I play games that not everybody plays" points, I have got some suggestions for you, my friend. Now, for my list, I'm going to focus specifically on games that I would recommend for fans of Mario's more mainline entries. Because if we go by the more unconventional Mario games, all of a sudden I could be recommending stuff like NBA Jam and Xenogears. Good games, by the way. For each game that I'll be suggesting, I'll provide a specific Mario game that I'm basing my recommendation off of. And the games I suggest are not at all what I'd call Mario clones. These are very much their own games. Because if you want something really close to a Mario game, then yep, I would still suggest Mario games. So with that in mind, first game I'd like to bring up is Little Nemo the Dream Master. Have you ever had dreams where you turn into animals by feeding them candy, not to be tried in real life? Well, Little Nemo does dream of such things, as that's the main mechanic in the game. Personally, my dreams are of monkeys feeding me bananas. But much like Mario has the various animal suits in Super Mario Bros. 3, I thought this game was a good choice for those looking for something even stranger and more difficult as well. Oh, and not to mention it's a 2D platformer, of course. In Little Nemo, I'd say becoming the animals is more of a focus than it is in Mario 3, where at times I panic and lose the frog suit right away because I wish I could just hang onto it the whole time. I'm a froggy, nothing can stop me, dang it. Well, in this game, if you enjoy being the animals, you'll have far more of an opportunity to play as them. The game is built more around the animals, with there always being the next animal to turn into close by. The only downside is that you're pretty worthless and helpless as a kid. Reminds me of when I was an actual kid. You can't even defeat enemies with the classic platformer butt slam. All you can really do is throw candy at stuff, which actually can be effective. Don't underestimate the power of throwing candy, I guess. You'll want to be the animals as often as possible, as some of them actually can do the classic platformer butt slam to take out enemies. You'll also be able to take advantage of their various abilities and attributes, which you'll use to collect keys scattered about each stage that you'll need to go through the exit. Oh, and one last point to sell you on this game, it was made by Capcom, so you know it was made by people who knew what they were doing. Next game I'd like to recommend is a platformer called Dynamite Headdy for the Sega Genesis, with the main mechanic being that you can launch your head at enemies. Still in the spirit of Mario, there's lots of platforming to be done, not to mention tons of fun different power-ups that can change your head into all sorts of different things. But perhaps the most interesting parallel to a Mario game it has, which again would be Super Mario Bros. 3 in this comparison, would be that the game is set as a play on a stage, but with Dynamite Headdy having more of an emphasis on puppets. And given that it came out not long after Super Mario Bros. 3, it's hard to imagine it wasn't influenced by it, especially since people like to say that, Super Mario Bros. 3 influenced pretty much all video games. A few other games over the course of gaming's history have used the theme of a stage play, and something I've noticed is that the theme is generally reacted to along the lines of, yeah! People always appreciate an effort towards creativity, and having a theme like a stage play lends itself well to all sorts of gameplay design hucklebuckle and hijinks. Now, at this point, you may be wondering to yourself, with a face like that, is Dynamite Headdy a dirty dog? Not really, he's sort of a goofball. I mean, he's a puppet, hence the ability to throw your face, not as intimidating in real life. Attacking things with your face really did seem to be a soft spot for Sega at the time. One more idea, and nope, still not good for real life. The next game I'd like to talk about is a newer game, though it's certainly been around for a while by this point, having come out in 2013, and that would be Rayman Legends. I'll say this though, it could have just come out recently and it would still be considered a nice looking game because ooh, is it ever pretty to look at. But it's not just about being pretty to look at, not that I'd know anything about that. The game hits on all the notes you'd expect from a solid 2D Mario platformer. Running feels good, jumping feels good, and special to this game, watching the enemies go poof when you defeat them never gets old. The specific Mario game that I think this game compares to is New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. And not only is Rayman Legends quicker to say, but also potentially more fun to play. It even has 4-player co-op, one of the biggest selling features of New Super Mario. Although I will say, careful who you co-op with. All it takes is a certain type of player who ruins it for everyone. You know who you are. Or you can just play it by yourself. Goodness knows we all know how that works. The game is perfectly fun however you play it, and if you've purchased any new console since the year 2006, then you'll have something to play it on. Odd to think it was originally going to be a Wii U exclusive, but then again, some people find it odd that the Wii U even exists, the poor thing. The next game I'd like to talk about is Klonoa, specifically the PS1 release, although the PS2 game is pretty solid as well. Known for a long time as an expensive PS1 game, in fact it still is, many of those yearning for the game were relieved when the Switch release was announced. That includes both the PS1 and PS2 games, by the way, but if you want to spend hundreds of dollars on it, you can always buy the PS1 version. Or, if you're a sneaky snake like me, buy the Japanese version for $20. I've actually been playing this a lot lately. The Japanese version has really cool disc art too. Oops, just a second. There we go. Kinda cute, right? This game utilizes what's often called 2.5D, where you move your character around on a 2D plane, but are moving through a 3D environment. And in the case of this game, sometimes elements of the game in the background can be interacted with, and of course, even attack you. Now, sure, this game doesn't feel like a Mario game in terms of the pure mechanics, but it is still a platformer with a very whimsical feel to it. So if you're looking for a platformer from the 32/64-bit generation and want something a little more straightforward and traditional than Super Mario 64 in terms of level structure, Klonoa is a great choice. The most unique mechanic it has is that you need to throw the enemies you grab to perform some of the required platforming, as throwing enemies beneath you will actually propel you upwards, of which the physics had me suspicious. I tested it out myself and yep, doesn't work. In typical fashion, you make your way from stage to stage with the occasional boss encounter, and you can of course throw things forward as well, all making for satisfying brain and motor skill activity as any good platformer does. The last game I'd like to mention is Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg, a game that can be hit or miss for people, but certainly is interesting. I would describe it as a game by Sega made to feel like a Nintendo game. This one comes as a recommendation from me directly for fans of Super Mario Sunshine, another game that seems to also be kind of hit or miss with people. If you thought the water pack in Mario Sunshine was polarizing, then get a load of this egg you gotta push around, bounce around, hatch into stuff, occasionally swear at, and all sorts of things. Now, if you want, you can just ditch it, but you'll need it to do stuff. So you're gonna need to like horsing around with the egg if you're going to enjoy this game. The main similarity it has to Mario Sunshine, in my view, is the way the stages and objectives are laid out. You have a good handful of objectives for each stage, each of which you try to accomplish separately and often go to different parts of the stage in order to do. I think this structure is what most people like about the game, where controlling your egg is more polarizing. I gotta say though, if you're someone who ranks game music on its skippability, in other words, good music to skip to, then skippity diggity doggity does this one rank high on the list. Ties into the game's aesthetic well too. Like most Mario games, this game has got a lighthearted, positive, and fun vibe to it. And sure, that can quickly turn to rage if you're having trouble controlling your egg, but this is a game that can really deliver for the right person. But whether or not any of the games I've listed in this video deliver for you, you never know. I will say though, that whenever I do game recommendations, to not feel pressure to get these games. Maybe you'll get some of them, sure, but not every game is for everyone. I mean, I constantly get games recommended to me by all of you, of which I definitely haven't played all of, but keep those recommendations coming because I love to see the passion for games, regardless of whether or not I play them. But for the record, Little Nemo actually was recommended to me by all of you a long time ago, so anybody thanking me for suggesting it in the video can thank their fellow commenters. Alright, but what did you think of all the games I suggested? And which other games would you suggest for fans of Mario games? Love reading your responses as always, and I will see ya in the next video.
He's the retro bird, yeah, and he's talking about video games. He's the retro